Okay, so I'm going to do some work on the tiger's nose. First of all, I start by looking at my photograph to have a look to see where the light is catching on his nose, looking for those really light, the bright white highlights, as it were. And I'm just going to mark them in with my white pencil, using a fairly heavy pressure, just to kind of mark where they are to help me try and leave them white, because I can get a bit carried away when I'm drawing else and forget about them. So just, no, you can't really see where they are at the moment. I'm just doing a few little bits just where that light is really catching, just to help leave them white. Okay, and then what I'm going to do now is I'm going to wash in the nose now. Now the nose it's a pink colour, but it's quite an orangey pink in places. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by putting a wash of light peach across the whole nose, apart from in those white areas. When I do it, I'm just going to use a kind of little circle motions. I really just want to make sure I've kind of got an even layer across the paper. Again, remember where you've left the whites. Having pressed quite hard, when you're pressing really lightly with this, it won't go over the top of the white, which is quite helpful. So when I'm doing this kind of work, I'm constantly turning the pencil round in my hand to help try and keep the nib sharp. I'm using a very light pressure, pressure 1, so you might not really be able to see this very well, but it is going on. Basically we're covering all the fleshy part of the nose. You can see there I left a white bit there. Again, it's very light just on this edge here, so I should be extra careful with my pressure. Okay, now I've done a wash of the light peach, I'm now going to put a layer of Deco Pink on, in exactly the same places that I've just put the peach. I'm just going to make sure I have a nice sharp pencil, and I'm just going to do the exact same thing, very light pressure, pressure 1, I'm just doing very light circles. Working my way around. Be careful to leave the highlights white. Again, I'm just keep gently turning the pencil around in my hand. It helps just to keep that point nice and sharp. Having the point sharp obviously helps to fill the tooth of the paper, so we haven't got any white bits showing through. Again, keep looking at your photograph. It'll help you with modelling the nose and the shapes of it. I might just go back over, you see the darker bits in the middle, I might just kind of do another layer of pressure one over the top of it, just because I know that's going to end up darker, and then just do very light on this very light side here, because the sun is really catching the nose. I've got the dark bit at the bottom, and then it's catching the nose here, and it's a bit pinker at the top, so okay, so that's the next layer again. See, with coloured pencils it is a slow process, and you are better off working in very light layers, and particularly to, you know, at the end you can perhaps go a bit heavier, but to start with, the light layers are what helps build up the depth of colour. So I've done that. Now I'm going to go back and add a little more orange in places. This time though I'm going to use a peach colour. So looking at my photograph, I've got this bit underneath here. It's a bit darker. So anywhere that's not in the lightest of the colours, we're going to put a very light pressure at this, because we're going to go too orange. Tends to be a bit oranger here, so I'll wash a bit on here. Again, I'm just doing small circular motions and turning my pencil. Using very light pressure. We've got this darker bit here where the light's not catching underneath. I'll put a bit there, and then just a few little odd strokes, just to kind of, there we go. Now, so I've done a light peach followed by a deco pink and then a peach. So now I'm going to go back to my pink again. And this time I'm going to use a pink rose colour. So where I've just done that orange, I'm going to go back over those places. Again, light pressure, small circular motion. There where the light's not catching underneath the highlight, and then this bottom bit here definitely needs some. Remember to leave the lightest colours though, because otherwise you won't be able to model your nose. This is what's giving it some structure. And we've got that bit at the bottom where the light's not catching it, and again the light's catching here, so I'm just doing very, very, very light, just a few little light strokes. Keep studying your photograph so you can actually see which bits are pinker, which bits are more orangey, and in a minute we're going to add some purpley colours to it as well. Okay, so for this I'm going to start by adding some greyed lavender. I think we'll give that one a try. If I look on his nose, particularly towards the top of the nose, the pinky colour is sort of a purpley pink, so I'm just going to sharpen my pencil. That's better. Again, keep it sharp. Very, very light pressure. Nice sort of circular motions. Just above the highlight here, it's definitely got a purple a bit. Just going over that a couple of times there. And then just blend that in a little bit over here. Again, I'm using a really, really light pressure. Don't want too much on this side, just a tiny few bits, just to help blend in. Got a couple of bits at the bottom. See this side there, where it's got a bit more shadow. I'm going to leave that bit there because that is a bit more orangey, but I am going to put some here because this is more purpley on this side. Okay, also going to put a bit just at the top bit of the nose here while I'm working on it. Using a slightly harder pressure. There we go. It comes down, there's definitely a purple bit there. Okay. Now I'm going to get my a Caran D'ache pencil this time, one of my Luminance, a violet grey. Just going to make sure I've sharpened it. It's looking a little bit, that's better. Like a nice sharp point. Right, this time I'm just looking for those real purpley bits in the nose. So above the highlight here, I'm just going to very gently, because this is a stronger colour, put a little bit along here. Help that highlight stand out a bit more. Okay. And then I'm going to put some, mark this back in, this we're losing it a bit, where the nose divides at the bottom. Okay. And just a few tiny specks. And I particularly want to just look at this bit here that's in the shadow, make it a bit darker. Okay. As you can see, the colours are gradually starting to build up. And what I'm going to do is actually go back to some of the colours I've been using previously, and I'm just going to go back over to help build up the depth of the layers. So I'd actually quite like to put another little bit of light peach in places. Also helps just to blend it in a little bit, going back over with these lighter colours. I'm probably using a pressure 2 at the moment. Just helps to bring out some of the colours that we've just put on. I'm not going to put too much at the top. This bit is a bit pinker, this bit's a bit oranger, so I'm just going to go over the more oranger bits, and then I'll get my Deco Pink back out and I shall go over the top bit here. Helps to bring out some of those purpley colours that we've just put on. Now, what I want to do, obviously it's still quite light in colour, so we need to add a bit more depth to it. In those, there's a few darker bits. Obviously the nose is quite light and bright, but just in those shadowy areas it's actually a bit more orange. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose my peach, and just on these bits sort of that are folded under the nostril here underneath the highlights, pressure 2, I'm going to go back over them and a bit at the bottom here, and particularly in the shadowy bit here. And then I'm going to get blush pink this time, and I'm just going to go over those orangey places, just so they're not too orangey but more of an orangey pink colour. Now, what I want to do is I'm losing the grey outline under his nostrils, so I'm just going to get a grey. I've got a 30% warm grey here, but it can be any of the greys. Just want to make sure I draw that line back in, just so I don't lose it. Pressure 2 I'm using here, I'd say. Keep looking at your photograph. I can't emphasise enough that it's all about observation. Again, I just want to go actually darken that a little bit now. Let me just get my greys out. I'm going to get a 70% cool grey, nice sharp pencil. I'm just going to fill in some of this particularly dark area here. By doing this, it will also help me to work out whether I've got the right tones within the fleshy part of my nose and what I need to continue to darken. Now, even within this dark area, when I'm looking at the photo, obviously there's what looks like the black bits. The grey bits, there are different tones even within this. It's not one solid colour, so there's a lighter bit here, but I'm just going to put it in with my grey at the minute, very lightly though, because there is a lighter patch just there. There we go. And then I'm just going to work up this side of the nose. Again, there's a lighter patch here that will build up, so nice light pressure. And then obviously we're into the very dark area here, so I'm probably using a pressure 2 to help fill this bit in. The reason that I like to fill in the base colours of the lighter tones within the fleshy part of the nose first is I personally find that if I do this all black around the edge first, I end up dragging black or the dark colours into my nice fresh light colours, and it makes it look dirty. So if I can get down enough of a base layer first, I find that I then don't end up dragging all these darker colours into areas I don't actually want them. Now, as you can see, just by adding some of this grey, even though it's not as dark yet as I would like it to be, it's starting to make the nose look lighter and brighter, and actually it's completely changed how I view it compared to next to the white. So I'm going to continue working on this darker area just to really build it up. Now I've laid down obviously my 70% cool grey. I actually now want to add some blue into the area, and for this I always use my trusty indigo blue, which I absolutely love, and one of my favourite pencils because it has so many uses. So I'm just going to start by working. Again, I'm only using quite a light pressure, 1 or 2. Into these really dark areas. Remember to keep checking your reference photo to make sure you're actually drawing where you think you should be drawing. Even in the lighter grey areas, I'm going to have just a tiny bit of blue. Go under the nose. Remember, while we're obviously working from a photo, for this purpose, it's not like we have to slavishly copy it exactly if we don't want to. We can obviously use our professional judgment if we feel that an area perhaps needs to be a little bit brighter or a little bit darker, to make the picture come alive more. Obviously, if you're doing a commission for somebody of their pet, well, obviously there is an element of this within it. We have to be a little bit more reserved, perhaps, in what we do, because obviously it's got to look exactly like somebody's pet. There's a little bit of blue just above his nose, and I'm just looking carefully at my photo because I want to make sure I get the right angles on the top of the nose here. I've got this darker line, but it is a bluer grey colour, and it kind of speckles up a little bit into his nose, and just tiny bit into his nose there as well. Speckled it up. Okay. Now I'm going to get my black grape next. Another great pencil for using in these dark areas. I'm just going to sharpen it. keeping my pencils nice and sharp for this. So we'll go back over those blue areas again. Pressure 1 or 2 at this stage. We're just really getting some colour in to give it depth. Just be careful when you're doing this line, make sure you've got it at the right angle around the bottom of the nose. So if I just look at that, I've got that bit should be down, that bit should be up, and then on this side it's like that. Just come up a little bit there. Okay. Actually probably needs to go up a little bit. Better. Like I said, even though you've drawn in your outline in whatever method you used, you still need to keep checking as you're drawing and colouring it in to make sure that line is still in the same place, because it's very easy for it just to move slightly. Just checking. See, I'm not totally happy with the angle at the bottom of my nose here. That should be down a bit more. That should be a bit more. I'll have to just go back in a minute. I'll just finish this bit first when I've got this pencil, and then I shall go back and just make sure I'm happy with the angle at the bottom. If you press too hard to start with, you'll find that you fill up the tooth of the paper too quickly and you can't get enough layers on to give you the depth that you need for this kind of realistic drawing. Okay, now I'm just going to study the bottom of my nose, looking at the angles. For this, I mean, you can even get your pencil and hold it up from your photograph to your drawing. Yes, I think I see the problem. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get a little bit of putty rubber or a bit of blue tack, and I'm just going to very carefully just dab away at some of this bottom bit here. It actually should come out a bit more. And the other reason, obviously, if we've done light layers, it enables us to actually, if you have made a slight mistake and it's not quite right, you can just very gently dab. Okay. And then I'm just going to get my grey, my 70% grey again, and I'm just going to very gently make sure I've drawn the angle in so I'm happy with it. Now I'm just going to check on my picture, 1 second. I'm going to hold that across from there, so yeah, that's looking pretty good on that side. And then this one needs to be a bit more of an angle. It's come out a bit wide. That's better. take your time. Coloured pencils, when you're working this way, is a slow medium. You do need to be patient with it. There we go. So I've done a bit more to darken the outside of the nose up. Before I go any further with that, I'm just going to go back into the fleshy part again, the middle bit here, the pinky part, and I'm just going to add a bit more to that. So I'm going to get, I think I'm going to try it. If you're ever not sure as well of the colour, I always keep a piece of scrap paper next to me, but I can just scribble on to make sure I've got the right shade of colour that I want. I'm just going to put a little bit of burnt sienna 10% from my luminance pencils on. It's a pinky orange colour, but it's just a little bit darker than some of the ones that we've used previously. So in the shadowy bits at the bottom, and again, his nose is not going to be completely smooth, so it doesn't have to be quite as smooth as the bottom layers that we put on. There we go. Remember to think about your highlights as well, don't colour over those. It's dark a bit here, and then I'm just going to gradually just put a little bit to blend it out, and particularly under here. There's that bit just there that's and on this corner here. A couple of little bits at the top. Okay, and now I'm going to add a little bit of rosy beige in some of the darker areas. Let's see, this bit down here particularly. Again, I'm just kind of adding little bits here and there. Probably using about a pressure too, so not too hard. Just adding a bit of shape to the nose, really. Get a bit in that shadowed area there. And on this bit of shadowed area above the hole in the nose. And then just on the top where it's a slight purple hue, but not too dark, just very lightly add a few bits. You can see I'm almost dabbing it on in places. There we go, that's starting to look better now. And then I'm going to get an even darker pencil, the Clay Rose, just on this bottom bit of the nose here. Again, I'm using a fairly light pressure. There's a tiny little speck at the top. Okay. Now I'm going to get my pink rose again, and I'm just going to go over a few bits of this, particularly on this top bit here. Just blending some of it in. Got a henna here. Now for this bit I'm just adding, because this is quite an intense colour, just gently adding a little bit from this split in the nose here, and a couple of little bits around the bottom where it's darker, and little bits in these where the light is not catching so much there. Again, remember to keep looking at your reference photo. I think I'm going to get my deco pink and just blend in some of these other colours that I've layered. Again, I'm sort of just using loose big circles. Now this side the highlight's not quite as harsh, so I'm just going to blend the edge of the highlighted area in. I'm using a fairly hard pressure over these darker areas just to really smooth the colours down a bit. Remember to leave the real highlights white though. Just keep turning my pencil every so often to keep the point nice and sharp. Okay. Now I can see the nose is really starting to take a bit of shape now. I'm just going to get my white. I'm just going to, just on these real highlighty bits, just going to smooth it back in a bit. No, I'm not awfully happy with that bit there. The highlight's a little bit wide, so I'm just going to blend it in a little on the edge. There's my pink back in it again. Okay, just check first of all to see if you've got the tone right, whether there's enough light and dark. For me, I just want to add a little bit more at the bottom, so I'm just going to get my henna very gently just at the bottom here, some few marks on. Remember, like we said, the nose isn't completely smooth anyway, so it's quite good to add a few of these little bits on. And now I've got my clay rose. It's not that you want to add too much, it's just a few little details makes all the difference. For me, this bit here just needs to be a bit, make it pop a bit more. And I'm going to get my peach and just add a bit of orange on over the top of some of these areas. Okay, what I'm going to do now I feel the nose is pretty much getting to where I want it to be, I'm just going to work the dark areas up inside the nostrils so I can just obviously check that I am happy with the contrast within the fleshy part of the nose. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my indigo blue and some black grape and my blackout. Okay, so I'm going to start with my indigo blue and I'm going to use probably about a pressure 1 to 2. Again, it's all about building up the light layers, so just again remember to keep checking your reference photo, make sure you're happy with where you're drawing, that you've not come out of the area you're actually wanting to draw in and change the shape of it. So I'm looking at those real dark colours. Again, turning my pencil around, keeping it nice and sharp to fill in the little grooves of the paper, because I obviously don't want any of the white showing through. Now I'm going to add my black grape, exactly where I've just put the blue. Again, I'm still using the really light pressure and I'm checking where I'm going. Make sure it's all as it should be. Now I'm going to add my black just in those real darky areas, using about pressure 2 at the minute. Okay, and I'm just gonna, there's a couple of lighter grey bits in there, so I'm just going to go for, I think I'm going to have a 70% cool grey. Blending it into those real darky areas as well. just on the edges, just to smooth it out a bit. Now, just where I've put those grey bits, there is a couple of lighter grey bits. I'm just going to get 30% core grey. I'm just going to, oh, mine's not sharp enough. I want it nice and sharp for this. Just going to add a couple of little bits over the top there. Using quite a hard pressure. Now what I want to do with the black again is I'm just going to rebuild up those colours. So I'm going to get my indigo blue, and this time I'm going to use quite a reasonable pressure, probably a pressure 3. It's just a question of now smoothing it out and really intensifying that colour. Careful on the lines on the edges. Now I've got my black grape again. Same thing, about pressure 3. Just adds a little something to the black, giving it a bit more vibrance to it, making it a bit more interesting. Take that just up into there as well, a little bit. Check my shapes here. And I'm just going to add a bit of the lighter grey just on this edge again. It's not quite so dark. Checking the edges are nice and clean. Just got my black again. I'm pressing really hard now. Just in those real darky bits. There we go. Now I can see that it's making the pink in the nose really pop now, and I can see a couple of little bits that I'd like to just amend slightly. I think I'm going to get my blush pink. I'm just making it sharp, and I'm being very careful with the black because I don't want to drag it in. Just rechecking my shapes. It's not quite round enough for me. There. And here I just want it a bit darker. Make that highlight pop a bit more. On top of the nose, I just want it slightly purplier. Can't say it, purplier. So I'm going to have a greyed lavender. Just very lightly, a few marks just on this top bit just there. Not all over it, just in a few places. over the bottom as well, just to... Now, for me, there's a highlight here. Just want to get my white pencil. I'm pressing pressure 5 now, and I'm just going back over that white bit. So I shouldn't really be using my fingers. One of my children has hidden my drafting brush. Okay. At the top of my nose, I just want to add a bit of grey onto that and a bit of blue. I'm going to get a warm grey, 50% warm grey. Sharpen it. So I've got my indigo blue again, now very light, so I don't want it too blue. I just want to add a little bit of the blue on that top edge there. And then go over it with my 50% warm grey. Again, I'm using about a pressure 2. It's a bit darker there. I'm just going to press slightly harder on that bit around there, just to intensify it a little bit. And I'm just dabbing it in a little bit. There's a few markings there. Again, I'm just going to get my black. I'm not altogether happy with it. Again, like I say, it's always good just to check your shapes, lines. There we go, just make it a bit rounder there, that's better. And I'm just going to get my %90 grey, and I'm just going to put a tiny little bit just to darken. There's a few spots, darken it, but I'm also going to add a touch of my indigo blue back in there. I do like to have a bit of blues and reds added to my greys. And that's where I'm going to leave the nose for now. I may come back to it later, obviously, when I've done a bit more around this part of the face underneath, so I can just really have a look at it. But they're the colours that I have used anyway, and again, it's just a question of working and building up the colours in light layers until you achieve the effect that you want to. I hope you found that helpful. Thank you for watching.